being a project manager in the engineering world can be completely overwhelming. Let's be honest, you got to manage projects, you got to manage people, you got to manage clients. Well, I'm lucky enough today to have with me Gary Hamilton. Gary is a Senior Vice President and USA Healthcare Director at WSP, and he is managing the largest of the largest healthcare projects. And what he's going to talk to us about today is some of the things that you can do as a project manager to become more well-rounded so you can be a great project manager, but also a great leader. Let's jump right in. Now, I'd like to welcome our guest onto the show today. Gary Hamilton is Senior Vice President and USA Healthcare Director at WSP. Gary, welcome to the Engineering Project Management Podcast.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony.
All right. So, Gary, just to get going here, in your own words, tell our audience a little bit about yourself, your role as kind of a group leader, as a healthcare director. Talk about that.
Yeah, so we're WSP is a really large company. We're approximately about 65,000 employees worldwide. We do work from transportation, to property and buildings. So anything to do with high speed rail, bridges, roadworks, but also my specialty is property and buildings. So that's to deal with all building design, whether it's a commercial, healthcare, science and technology, and those business. But my specialty is healthcare. I lead healthcare for the U.S. And also part of the global healthcare team as well. And we design and build hospitals on a daily basis. That's our daily job. That's what we do. I love doing it. It's my passion in really providing healthcare for the population, and really one of my drive is to have equitable healthcare for all. So that's something that I pushed a lot in terms of the project that we seek, and a lot of the projects that we're currently doing.
That's awesome. It's great to have a kind of a mission and a purpose like that as an engineer. I think it can be really beneficial in terms of keeping yourself going and keeping your team going. And Gary, you have more than 25 years of experience in the design field. You're working a lot in healthcare facilities these days, USA, Canada, Europe, the Caribbean. For those wondering, what does a healthcare director do? What are some of the responsibilities on a day-to-day basis that you have? And I'm sure there's many, but talk us through some of them.
Yeah. So, so firstly, I'm required to set out the strategic direction, of healthcare. What are we going to achieve in the next 4 to 5 years? And also, what are we going to achieve, in year one, to year 5. And that means managing 26 offices nationally, which is a lot, but also having different regional directors who support me in my mission and what I'm doing. I try to make sure that we're ahead in terms of all project leads and project pursuit, especially for larger pursuits, making sure the team is making all the connections with the clients and all the stakeholders of part of such projects. Managing the day-to-day activities in terms of making sure we have the right staff available for the right projects. We bring the right staff to bear, for the projects all over the country. Looking at people management, making sure that we're retaining and our staff, which is a challenge in this environment. So and also attracting great staff to really help us to push and push and help our strategic growth that we're trying to do. At our average, we're doing a 10% growth. We're aggressive in acquiring companies as well, who have similar culture to WSP for healthcare. We've done that successfully with the acquisition of Leach Wallace about 4 years ago, and also for TK1SC in California as well. So it's encompassing a whole lot of tasks, and I do have a great team that support me as well, in this effort.
That's great. And, one of the things I want to ask you about, Gary, is, I mean, you have a pretty deep technical background. You have a bachelor's degree, master's degree in engineering. You've got a lot of credentials to your name. You've been involved in the design of projects, as I said, for a long time. But now you're in a position that is heavily, a leadership position. Like you said, you're thinking strategy, long-term, short-term, which is interesting and exciting to me. Talk a little bit about how someone who's so technically focused can
Yeah.
make a transition like that, because I'm sure a lot of our viewers want to do that. They want to become leaders in the industry. They want to do the stuff that you're doing, but they're also heavily technical. So talk about your personal experience in making that transition.
Yeah, and what it is, for me, it's more, more of a natural leader in terms of my skill set. Leading in all facets of my life. I used to be the captain of, several soccer teams. I used to captain my chess team, and also a community leader as well. In terms of most of the mission trip that I do, and I have a nonprofit foundation as well. So that's something that I always like to do in terms of like to lead, even on projects. It's the moment I started healthcare, it's that general tendency to try to take the lead and try to lead my troops to the finishing line. If it's to a project submission or project completion, that's something that I enjoy doing. So on a bigger aspect of really pushing to leadership and where I am is understanding that technical part is the first part of doing it. So understanding the drivers, understanding what we need to do in terms of requirements, especially with the healthcare space. It's much more technical in terms of the requirements than a commercial space. So understanding that helped me in terms of my transition. But as I said, I did do a master's. I actually did a lot of leadership training within the firm as well to prepare me for a position like this. But I think it's something that if you truly want to go into leadership, it's really trying to understand all aspects of the work and not I would say don't pigeonhole yourself with try to not only concentrate on your discipline, concentrated on trying to learn other discipline and well, and how discipline interrelate and how you're able to navigate the whole space of delivering projects, and really also by expansion understanding your clients that you're working for, understanding how to relate to them, understanding how to meet their needs and demands at times, because sometimes it's really demanding field to be in. But I think overall, working hard, putting the effort, and making sure that the company that you're at is giving you those management and leadership training to prepare you for the position that I'm at now doing.
That's great. And I think really a takeaway from that for me is that if you want to be a good leader, even project manager and project management, is you have to understand all the different aspects of the projects that you're working on. And I think sometimes, to your point, what happens as a younger engineering professional, you might get into a technical niche, you might really learn everything about that. But then when you're asked to kind of look at things from a broader perspective, it becomes a little bit difficult, right? Because you don't have the knowledge that you need to interact with another discipline or a client. And so I do think that that's good advice. If you're someone who wants to be a real leader in the industry, don't get me wrong, you're going to start in a certain technical field. I mean, we all do. But at some point in time, you're going to want to branch out. You're going to want to talk to different people. I've even seen some firms where they have rotational programs that can be really valuable, where you get to go in a couple different divisions or departments to learn different things. Because really, when you're managing a project, people look at you for answers. It doesn't matter if it's your technical background or not. Like, you've got to come to the table with answers. And I think also what Gary said is, yes, it's good for you to like have some leadership instinct inside of you and want to lead people in projects, but you also need some support and development, because there's parts of leadership that you may be instinctual to you, but there's parts that you just have to learn. And I think the good firms out there are going to give you that training. They're going to support you in that field. Sometimes you have to ask for it and kind of voice what your goals are within your company. But I think at the end of the day, becoming that well-rounded leader can help you in project management, can help you in Gary's stage where he's beyond that now, managing a division, overseeing a division. I think that that's Definitely an important message. And when we get into like talk about project management a little more, Gary, I think one of the things that I would imagine is something that's really, really complex in what you do is thinking about like resource management, right? Because talk about resource management a little bit for those that are kind of new PMs or learning about project management.
Yeah, and especially, and talking about it as part of delivering a project, we can't understate how much resource management is and how much it means to a project. It's bringing the right people, to the project. That's the first instant, but also making sure that the right people are brought in at the right time.
Hmm.
And that's in order for the process to be streamlined, you have to make sure that you're not overloading your project. You're making sure that the resources that you have is the exact resource that you need at the time. And in walking through the design, a design and the project management of a healthcare project, you have different phases of design. The schematic, design development, to construction document, and to construction administration. What you want to do is to make sure that that you're not overstressing any part of your job in terms of resources. SD is going to be your upfront, experts, your technical expert who's going to set out that conceptual design for your project. And then your design development is really bringing in more folks at that time who are going to do some of the production, and construction design is just straight production, but also making sure that the quality of your documentation is there as well. So you have to have some technical expert making sure that your quality control process is part of the whole design aspect of what you do, and it follows from start to finish. So and then for your construction administration, you're delivering your project, you're in the field, you're making sure that everything that you design is implemented. So it's making sure that you have the right team who are detail oriented enough to make sure that they go through all the submittals and go through all the RFIs, and making sure that they're doing their due diligence, and really putting together the making sure that the stuff, the item that you design, and making sure that some of the stuff that you do are not an impediment to the construction process also. Because as we understand now, there's a severe challenges with projects because of obtaining equipment.
Right.
It's really a challenge now. So as engineers and as designers, we have to make sure that our process is extremely streamlined, so we don't hold up the process in any way, because that will be some delay in the project that can cost you and cost the owner some tremendous time. So that's something that we do. There's other, there's design assist process and other delivery process that will push you to tweak how you bring the different staff, because it depends on if it's a traditional design build. You have a traditional process in terms of ramping up your staff, but if it's a design assist, you might have to have more staff come to the project at the start. So it varies from project to project, and it depends on the project delivery that you're actually doing as well.
Yeah, and for those of you out there kind of new to project management, you're not familiar with resource management or resource loading, some people might call it. Essentially, like if you're estimating a budget for your project and you're assuming like, hey, Gary and Anthony are going to be working on my project, this is what their rates are, but you don't realize that like Gary and Anthony are going to be busy working on other projects when the project comes through. So now you're stuck using people that have higher rates, let's say, than us. That's resource management. You got to make sure that if you're counting on people to work on a project, that they're available to work on the project. And also a really good point that Gary makes, what about like construction equipment, right? Or things that also that you're relying on. If you're telling your client, I'm getting the project done by this time, are you sure that you're going to be able to get the equipment on with some of the supply chain issues we have going on right now? So there's a lot that goes into that as a project manager. And I think with COVID and everything, it's kind of made things a little more complex in terms of scheduling and resource management. So you really have to kind of be on top of that. And I would imagine even, paying a little bit more attention to that. And so that's something that you can really think about. I mean, it's exciting, it's interesting, it's challenging, but it's definitely a big part of project management. So Gary, when you're working on projects or overseeing projects, what are some of the things that you might do to try to motivate and engage your team throughout the project? Because these projects can go on for long periods of time.
Oh yeah, and typical. I'm working on IU Health, and that will be a 7-year project. With a tremendous, staff, tremendous amount of resources, that are, deployed on this project throughout the whole phases. But one of the things that we try to do is, at the start of each meeting, whether it's in person or virtual, we have, icebreakers, different icebreakers to really help us to move our minds, differently, separate from actually the design process, and really just start talking about life and talking about stuff that you're doing, enjoyable things that you're doing, and really, giving you the opportunity to really just have a voice and speak something separate apart from projects, but also making sure that, that you have a lot of team building effort. And that should be separate, from working. So it's doing events and it's go extra and per se, or if you want to go, we actually just did some miniature golf,
Okay.
and those are some, bowling, whatever it is. We need to, and one of the things is that that you have to understand is that working on a long project really require a lot of effort when trying to make sure that you do a lot of teaming activities and making sure that your staff is motivated, making sure that you're speaking to your staff also, understanding the challenges that they're going through, understanding, finding out where they can, you can actually help them, and where you can bring folks to just try to assist them, as they go along, but also try to give people some respite, some rest. If there's a big submission, we would have a celebratory, event after lunch, bring out the team to lunch, and those are some of the stuff that the staff appreciate. And also, highlighting, some great achievement within your team as well, and providing rewards, if it's financial, or maybe a extra PT or extra day off. Those are some of the stuff that we do, to continue to push the team. And to be honest, it's varied. What we do is varied, but it's actually needed. Sometimes it has to be personal, but also the expanded to a lot of group efforts, and that does help the morale of the team and making sure that we're sticking to our task, and we're also having fun while delivering these tough projects, for for the next 7 years, especially for IU Health.
No, it's great. And I really like it, because really the point is that we're not robots, right? And you can't just keep doing work day after day after day, being productive, being billable. All that's great. But at the end of the day, these are the people that you're probably with, these people more than you're with your family at some points in time, right? So you need to get to know them, because they're kind of your work family. They're kind of people that you're going to live with on a daily basis. And so I think doing things like Gary recommended to try to make sure that people, get to know people beyond just, hey, you're going to help me do this on the project, you're going to help me do this drawing, can really, forge an important bond. And at the end of the day, 7-year project is a tremendous amount of time to be spending with people, and a tremendous amount of time to be spending on one project. You got to keep things exciting and interesting and engaging for people, so they want to show up each day to be part of the team. And so those are some good points there. So healthcare is an industry that obviously is critically important. There's been a lot of eyes on it the last few years with COVID and everything that's gone on. Why is leadership development so important in healthcare? What type of leadership is needed in healthcare? Maybe you could talk about that for some of the engineers out there interested in that industry.
Oh, it's funny. I always say I bumped into healthcare as a profession, but it's something that I'm glad I bumped into, because it really connect my passion, as we're talking about, with the mission of delivering health and to population that needs it. But leadership is so important. It's especially in healthcare. Going through the pandemic has really caused us to double down on leadership, because that the supply chain efforts, to really get facility up, continue the continuation of healthcare facility during that challenging time, making sure that we're treating the COVID patients, but also making sure that all the patients in the hospital are taken care of as well. Was indeed challenge, and this really pushed a lot of the facility folks to really think different, really to push their most of their leadership quality, and they did step up a whole lot and really delivered. But also leadership in design is extremely important, because during the pandemic, it really caused us to realize that the U.S. healthcare system it's not as resilient enough to handle something like a full airborne pandemic. We're glad, we're happy that it wasn't a full airborne, but it was challenging enough to really threaten that a lot of lives that was lost, but also the potential, it could have been worse if the health system didn't hold up. But what we're doing now, and what we're pushing to do as leaders, is really making sure that the facilities that we now design will be ready for the next pandemic. We don't know when it will come, but we're making sure that we're making good design decisions, and that take leadership, that takes talking to your clients and really holding their hands, and sometimes really push them, especially with these budget challenges that we're having with projects. They're hard conversations, but we have to take the lead in making sure that we're making the right decisions, because when the next pandemic arises, we want to make sure that our healthcare system are resilient enough and are ready to meet whatever challenges that are posed during those tough times.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that the one thing that you mentioned that I think is important for our viewers to remember as a good project manager, as a good leader, you not only need to think about your client, which for example might be a healthcare company, but you have to think about the end user of your projects, which, like Gary mentioned, is the patients in the hospital, right? Like, how are you helping them? How is your design, making sure that everyone can get treated in the right amount of time? So that's, I think, what's one of the exciting things about project management is there's so many different things to think about. And while it can be stressful, sure, it's also exciting and challenging. And if you have a good team, like sounds like Gary does, you can really, tackle these projects together, which is awesome. So Gary, that being said, I mean, one of the key goals of project managers is to get their projects done on time and on budget. And I know we could talk about that forever on your types of projects, but what are some of the key drivers or the big things that you see that are important for PMs to make sure they can deliver their projects on time and budget?
Yeah, so schedule is extremely important. Maintaining and managing your schedule. So if it's for us, we try to do pool planning on all stages of our project, just to make sure that we're making we're delivering on time, and making sure that our precedents are sorted, and making sure our team understands those deadlines as well. So one of the things that we do, what we do as a part of a project, project submission, is really identifying different what we would call milestones, and looking at milestones and also making sure that we backtrack those milestones to when we want to bring our quality control, and although they're part of the whole process, but you want to have your quality control, final quality control check before you send out those projects to your client. That will make sure that you're meeting your schedule, but also making sure that you're bringing the right staff. One of the things that we do also, is make revenue. We need to make money. That's something that we want to make sure that that's a part of what we do. So managing costs is extremely important. Managing how much staff and the resources and bring them to the project in the on the right time, to make sure that we're not overstressing our the fees that we're getting from these projects. But but also making sure that we're managing the risk throughout, in terms of design risk, but also managing your stakeholders and your clients, because sometimes you will get you will be asked to do items that are not part of the scope. You have to make sure that you talk to the to your design, your project managers, and making sure that this is not there's a specific method of actually getting that done, so that you could get the change order and have additional time if you need it. So you have to make sure that this is documented, make sure that you go through the right approval process to get this done as well. So it's really managing a whole aspect. It's managing the your schedule, it's managing your resources, and in the right way, managing your clients, just to make sure that they don't change add too much change order, so that that will affect the delivery of your project. And really try to motivate your team also, just to make sure that they stay motivated, and that will help you to deliver the project on time. So it's really a confluence of different activities, but it's really for you as a leader, just to make sure that you're fully abreast of everything that's taking place, and making sure that you're managing all the constraints within the projects as well.
No, that's great. And if you're new to project management, these milestones, you could think of them as like progress points along your project. For example, maybe you have to submit plans and specifications at 30% completion, and then maybe 60%, 90%. And it gives you and your team something to work towards, get to that point, and then kind of reset yourself and see where you're at. And there's a lot that goes into it. We're going to cover some of these different topics on different episodes, like the schedule and the milestones and things of that nature. But at the end of the day, again, to Gary's point, like there's just a lot of things to manage, and something like a schedule can kind of, make sure that you keep all these things on track and give you like a good point of reference or a baseline that you can use as a project manager to make sure you're kind of hitting those targets. All right, so I got one more question for you in this segment here, Gary. Talking about training, you mentioned the importance of leadership training, project management training. As a leader, how do you ensure that your people are kind of getting the right training that they need? What does that look like for you?
Oh, that you can't on this. Train is one of the most important part of what I do. To for any young engineers or young project managers coming in the industry, we have to make sure whatever company that you're a part of, make sure that they have a good educational setup. So in WSP, and we just acquired KW as well. We have WSP, what we call WSP University. We're doing some work with KW, and we're calling it KW University as well, because we bought that company as a data center company. And we even have chancellor appoint chancellors and dean of education as part of our, so we're showing that we're extremely serious about what we're doing. And we have training and development coordinators who work with the team to deliver both technical training. So they would train our senior staff or subject matter expert to teach these topics. And we have webinars, we have live trainings, and these are structured training, from the inception of starting the company to when you're even continuation of training when you're a senior engineer, just to make sure that you keep aware of all the codes and the guidelines and all the changes that takes place. So I can't stress enough that training education, we have to make that commitment to get it done, and companies need to make investments. As a senior engineer and a senior leader now, I can't stress. If you look at my name, it looked like alphabet soup because there's so much letters behind it. But I make sure that continuous learning is an important part of what I do. If I want to be a project manager, PMP certification is a must, but also a continuation of learning, also, so that you could get your credits also, that will keep you fresh also and keep you abreast with new technology, with new ideas. That's something that in our profession, it's extremely essential. So educational and training, and we do at WSP, we get training. Even it's funny. I'm getting some emails that I have some training that's due. So it's just like so they do prompt you as well, because you're on a schedule, and it keeps you fresh and keep you ahead of the curve in terms of in your job. So we can't understate that enough, that training and education should be an important part of any job or any project management job, any company that you try to make sure that you try to do your research and that they have that. And if they don't, you have to ask for it.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one thing you said that's really important is that consistency or continuous improvement, continuous education. I mean, we do a lot of PM training at EMI, and we're always seeing like someone say, hey, I became a project manager like 7 years ago and I got my training and I haven't done anything since. And I mean, listen, like this is an industry where things are changing like every day, things are getting updated, there's new challenges. So you need to continue to build your PM skills throughout the lifetime as a project manager, not just when you start as a PM. And I think that that's something that's really important to stress, because if you're not getting better, you're not going to be able to serve your clients better. And that's the whole point of what we do, especially in the consulting world. So, all right, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back and we're going to ask Gary for his biggest PM pitfall and how we can avoid it. We'll be right back. right, we are back at the Engineering Project Management Podcast with Gary Hamilton, Senior Vice President and USA Healthcare Director at WSP. And we talked about a lot of stuff today, Gary, related to project management. But what I want to ask you now is, what's kind of the biggest project management pitfall that you've seen in managing all the project that you've managed, and some recommendations for how to overcome or avoid this pitfall?
And I talked about it earlier. It's really managing expectations, and that's really on on every side. It's looking at all the stakeholders as part of your project and making sure that you're managing them closely and understanding understanding where they are, understanding how to to meet their requirements. One of the things that I think I'm great at, and what I push to do is making sure that I understand, my clients, understand their needs, understand their vision and what they're trying to achieve. And this is a continuous process because it changes throughout the projects as well. And that's something that we don't understand. Sometimes at the start of the project, there's a vision that they want to achieve, and you sit and you try to document those visions, and halfway through, that vision change, and it's not on them. It's really on them realizing that maybe some of the ideas that I was thinking maybe were over the top, or maybe they were not in sync with what my organization is is thinking. And also maybe because of some internal changes that occur within that user group that you have when you're putting together that program, and also putting together that project charter that you're using for the project. So it's really making sure that the communication path and the precedence is set in terms of talking to your clients, making sure that you continue that conversation straight through the project. Have your cadence of meetings with all your stakeholders, making sure that your documentation is in sync with what they require, making sure that you're having regular reviews before you document your final product. So that's something that I would say it's my one of the initially what I as I say, in my past experience is that I would assume that when I get the initial outlay for my client, and he determined his vision, I articulate it and put it back to him in writing. That's it. That's what I'm going to deliver at the end of the project. But I found out that in a tough way that's not the case. But it's it really helped me to understand and really push me to really have better conversation and continuous communication with our clients, just to making sure that vision is a living vision that can change, but also that I'm keeping that conversation and making sure that we're adjusting just to meet those new requirements as well.
That's great. And really, at the end of the day, your job as a project manager is to meet the expectations of your client, and you can't meet those expectations unless you know what they are. And to Gary's point, they may change, but as long as you have like an open conversation with that person around their expectations on a regular basis, then you can make sure you're meeting those. And I think that applies even from a project manager to their team members, right? Like, your team members need to understand what your expectations are for them in terms of project management and leadership. And it really, expectations are something that are really important in terms of growth for someone as a leader, as a project manager. So once again, Gary Hamilton, WSP. Gary, I want to thank you so much for spending some time with us here on the Engineering Project Management Podcast.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Anthony.
I hope you enjoyed that episode with Gary Hamilton. He is a premier project manager and leader, and we were thrilled to have him here with us. We put out videos like this on a weekly basis to help engineering professionals become better managers and leaders. So please consider subscribing here so that we can help you engineer your own success. I'll see you next week.